And so I met this guy named Aaron Young. And when he told us, he's on camera, and he didn't care who was around. He didn't care about the cameras being in his face. He told us his encounter. And that was the first time in my life where it registered to me, holy shit, I think these things are real. But I'll tell you, boy, we could talk all day about this. The things I know now, you know, I've got ex-FBI contacting me, ex-DEA. I've got DNR people contacting me, giving me the truth and the lowdown about Sasquatch, at least here in Michigan. What else would you like to know?
Jean Tewksbury, a respected Eastern panther and wildlife researcher. Her primary focus is pursuing Maine's mystery cat. She also investigates and researches sightings, reports, and newspaper articles on this topic from other Eastern states. If you've had a sighting or have any information on this subject matter, Jean would like to hear from you. We can find her on Facebook and Instagram. Also, you can send her a direct message via Instagram or Facebook Messenger. Jean Tewksbury is on the trail of the mysterious Eastern Panther. Report your sightings today.
Are you curious about the unknown, the unexplainable? Do you find yourself intrigued by the mysterious and paranormal side of our world? Join us on an adventure into the world of inexplicable discoveries and investigations that may someday give us the final answer as to what may be behind the veil of reality. The borders of space and time have opened once again, and transmitting from the mountains of West Virginia, it's time once again for Let's Find Out with Diego. The universe is waiting for you.
The borders of space and time have opened once again, and transmitting from the mountains of West Virginia, it's another episode of Let's Find Out with Diego. Thank you for taking this journey with me. On this episode of Let's Find Out, our guest is the founder of Bigfoots of Michigan, where he explores and investigates Sasquatch reports, eyewitnesses identifying Bigfoot habitats, and is the producer of the Bigfoots of America podcast and YouTube channel. We will be learning all this plus more. Please welcome to Let's Find Out our good friend Bryan Sawyer. Bryan, my friend, welcome to Let's Find Out. I'm so happy to have you on.
Thanks for having me on, Ralph. You know, we've been talking for some time, and finally our schedules worked out, man. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, you know, and the first time I made contact with you is I just, you know, somebody mentioned to me that when I started the news show, just started getting Instagram, and I really wasn't Instagram. It doesn't really look that great. I got into it. You're one of the first people I contacted, actually.
Oh, cool.
At that time, you were busy doing a project.
Yeah.
You said, you know, I'll get back to you once I'm done with the season. I said, great. And now that you're pretty much into this already, you just set up Bigfoots of Michigan and Bigfoots of America. You had the podcast and the YouTube channel going, and now you're planning you're planning on producing a series of documentaries. So the $1 million question I'm going to ask you right off the bat, why Bigfoot and what's going on in Michigan, brother?
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, we'll do a little bit of a backstory. Sure. So I stumbled into acting. I'm 55 now. I stumbled into acting just kind of by happenstance. You know, I did a drama piece at church, and the crowd went nuts. And so then I jumped down to, back then was Second City, Detroit. And I started learning the ropes by guys like Keegan-Michael Key. He's one of the first people I met down there. You know, he's big time in Hollywood now. And I met a Saturday Night Live writer by the name of Rich Guattari, and we kind of hit it off. So I started learning the ropes in the industry of acting here in Michigan. Back then we had film incentives, and a lot of Hollywood productions were coming to town. So I started meeting a lot of people. Janet Pound. She's the Hollywood casting director from Michigan. So real close with her. In fact, we're doing a project. Hollywood's coming to town next week. I'm running my lines right now. We're doing a sitcom pilot. And so just all that acting stuff just kind of came into play. And I got to know everybody in the Detroit area, kind of get into the inner circle with all the managers and the agents and the filmmakers. So about 2 years ago, a year and a half, 2 years ago, I do a lot of subcontracting. I've met Ben Affleck, Henry Cavill, Gal Gadot, hung out with John Hamm, David Harbour from Stranger Things. So whenever a Hollywood production comes to Michigan, I'm usually playing some part, some role in that production. So I've been kind of schooled and learning what to do. So I got hired to do a TV pilot series called Pizza Monster. And it's a cryptid paranormal show. They had some ideas. And so we were filming that. And during the filming of that, I met this guy named Aaron Young. And he was a Sasquatch eyewitness from the state of Michigan, from the city of Gladwin. Now, prior to all of this, let me give you some backstory. I'm just like anybody else growing up. I'm a kid. I'm watching In Search of back in the 1970s with Leonard Nimoy.
Yes.
That is the first time. Yeah, man. That is the first time I see Patty, the Patterson Gimlin film, and it's like, what do you mean there's monsters in the woods, And then that led into, which is so ironic right now, looking back on it, is the $6 Million Man episodes where Andre the Giant played the Bigfoot coming out of the spaceship. And what's crazy about that is the connection they had back then with Sasquatch and UFOs, and now everything I'm learning going down the rabbit holes. So I'm going to tell you right now, being involved, I'm not a big time player in Hollywood, but I know what goes on here in Michigan. And I'm going to tell you right now, it is of my opinion that the CIA and Hollywood are joined at the hip, and the CIA and the government feeds Hollywood ideas, whether it be UFOs, whether it be Bigfoot, ghosts, all this kind of stuff. They've got the know of all this stuff. And I think what they do is feed Hollywood storylines or information. Hollywood comes up with the storyline. And this is about desensitizing the population. So not to get too crazy on conspiracy theory, but I think they're feeding us baby food right now. They're letting us know. And so I met this guy named Aaron Young. And when he told us, he's on camera, and he didn't care who was around. He didn't care about the cameras being in his face. He told us his encounter. And that was the first time in my life where it registered to me, holy shit, I think these things are real. Because me being an actor, I'm like, nobody can pull that off the way this guy pulled it. Either he's one of the best actors I've ever met and the biggest liar combined into one. From everything I saw and the follow-up questions, just digging deep, getting to know this guy, he's the real deal. He had gotten out of high school. He's about my age now, but years ago, he had gotten out of high school, and him and his buddies were about to graduate, and they went to the local campground in Gladwin, where all the teens hang out, and they're staying overnight, and him and I think it's like 2 or 3 of his buddies are sitting around the campfire, and it's the middle of the night. And actually, I think it was going into daytime is what it was. They're pulling an all-nighter, they're drinking and all that kind of stuff. And he's sitting towards the fireplace, and his buddy's, straight across from him. And he looks at his buddy's face, and his buddy is scared to death. His buddy's looking past him, looking right through him, looking past him at something. And so Aaron's like, hey, man, what's going on? And the guy's freaking out, and he starts to point. And Aaron turns around, and the video is actually, I believe it's episode number 3 in the Bigfoots of Michigan. If you go to YouTube, check out Bigfoots of Michigan channel. And it's episode number 3 of our TV pilot series. And Aaron turns around, and he says, this thing screams like he's never heard before. And he's within, according to the video, I think he's somewhere between 10 and 20, 25 feet away from this thing. So he's close. And when this thing screams, it was actually in a squatted down position. He said that thing was as tall as him in a squatted down position. The guy had looked past him. Oh, that's what it was. The guy had looked past him and said, hey, when did that stump get there? And they're like, what do you mean? What stump? And they turn around, and when all the eyes were locked on this thing stands up and gives a big scream. And he said, we left everything there and we hopped, and that thing was still standing there screaming at us when we hopped in the station wagon. Back in the 1970s, station wagons were hot. And they got out of there. And he hadn't been back to that location until we filmed last year. Just about 10 months ago, I think is when we filmed it. So he hadn't been back since he'd been about 17 or 18 years of age. And he was still scared. He was still nervous. It's in the video. He is still looking around. He is still affected by this thing. So when that happened, just prior to meeting Aaron and going through that whole account and filming that TV pilot series, there was right by me here in Sandusky, Michigan, the Cass River sighting. Now, Cass River is a river that flows. So everybody talks about Michigan, we talk about it being the mitten, and it's kind of shaped like a hand. And, here's the thumb. Well, in the thumb of Michigan, we have these two rivers that kind of form like this triangle, okay, almost like a pyramid triangle. And on the west side, there's the Cass River, and on the east side, there's what's called the Black River. But the Cass River sighting happened right by a town called Cairo. So I started investigating the Cass River sighting, and that got me into the idea of making the TV pilot series out of it. And so all last year, traveled Michigan, mainly in the thumb of Michigan, because we found in the thumb of Michigan, there's probably 2 or 3 families of Sasquatch. And in fact, I know where one family is right now, within a 5-mile radius. So yeah, that's how we got involved with the TV series. And then of course, as we're building this, my job as an executive producer is to package this for the TV studio so I can sell this to Hulu or Discovery Channel. We're actually talking with Hulu right now. And that's where we're hoping to have this platform distributed. And so of course we branched off because podcasts are hot right now. And with in mind, Bigfoots of Michigan is kind of like, all right, are we going to run out of material because we're just dealing with Michigan? So then we branched off into Bigfoots of America to cover the rest of the state. And that's the hope, just to kind of go nationwide. We're taking our time, about a 2-year period to pour the foundation of this TV pilot series and kind of a whole package deal to sell to the studios. So that's what we're doing right now. And it's a ball, man. I've been traveling all over the state, meeting Sasquatch, Bigfoot eyewitnesses, and it's been crazy, man.
Well, that's one of the things I was going to ask you, because you initially, with the backstory, you got that first story and you know how to read somebody because you're an actor. So you know somebody, how they act, whether they're telling the truth or not.
For sure.
Where the eyes go,
Yep.
like body mechanics and all that. Now that you're well on your way into this journey, have you been inundated now with people wanting to talk to you to share their stories?
Oh yeah. I filled up season 1 so quick, and now I'm just about filled up, and I'm actually filled up for season 2. I'm just trying to manage the time frame because we have a new element we want to bring in to the show. But yeah, so I'm pretty much booked for season 2 as well. Yeah, they're lined up. And for all the naysayers out there, for all of you who don't believe Bigfoot is real, here's what I can say. Even though, let's clarify something, I've never seen one personally yet myself. I've had encounters though now. They say I'm marked, and now I have encounters. I've had actually a few encounters here at my house. We filmed an episode down in Kentucky, Slem, Kentucky, which is not too far from Hazard, Kentucky, and had some encounters there. Some whoops, some grunts, some rock claps. Hopefully we're going to hit Alabama, as a matter of fact, pertaining to that question. The viewer asked from Alabama. We have 2 eyewitnesses down there who want us to come down. And one of them said they had a 15 to 16 footer, they figure, albino Sasquatch walk right in front of this car.
Wow. Well, since you brought up that question, I'm going to hop ahead a little bit. It's a great question from my friend Dustin in Alabama. He's asking you, has Bigfoot always been in Michigan, or do you think they migrated from the Pacific Northwest and Canada? It was a question because since Michigan seems to have a concentration of upright canids, what most people call dogmen, and there's been an increase in dogman sightings. What's the connection?
Well, yeah, they're here and they've been here. I think they've been here before us. What these things are, we don't exactly know. I would label them anywhere from Gigantopithecus all the way to interdimensional beings. Okay. I would connect them to the Greek mythology, where you have portraits of minotaurs, half bull, half man. We're going that far back. This is before modern civilizations. This is knowledge lost. And so, yeah, they've been in North America, and they've been all around in North America before we got here, before the Indians got here. And one particular question pertaining to Michigan is there's an account of the Indian tribes of Michigan having to band themselves together to, quote unquote, war against the prairie beasts because they were thick as leaves on trees. So all the tribes of Michigan had to bind themselves together to war against these creatures, to push them back and to kind of eradicate the area so they could live a normal life, because there's just evidently so many of them. And that's what we're finding out right now. I live in the thumb of Michigan. It used to be mainly farmland. We've lost a lot of population here in Michigan. And so some of the farmlands are being taken back by wilderness and forest. And so I think in the thumb area, the population in the thumb area is back on the rise. I think it's pouring over from the rest of the state. I would label the upper peninsula of Michigan as the hotspot for Sasquatch. And, you just work your way south and they might become less and less. But I'll tell you, boy, we could talk all day about this. The things I know now, I've got ex-FBI contacting me, ex-DEA. I've got DNR people contacting me, giving me the truth and the lowdown about Sasquatch, at least here in Michigan. What else would you like to know?
Well, as you were talking, now I think we have a connection here, because you're talking about farmlands being taken over again by the woods, right? So the Earth is always going to go back to its original form. It does what it wants to do.
Right.
My opinion is this, and if you can share it with me, that's fine. If not, that's okay too. I'm only talking about the United States. I haven't been anywhere else. I can only speak to here. I've been back when I was an entertainer, I put a lot of miles on the cars. I've been to many different states. And I've flown a lot too. When you leave your little bubble of population, whether there's a city, a town, or whatever, you're going to fly over this country. You're going to see an awful lot of land that is not inhabited by humans. So my theory is these creatures, they're masters of their domain. They want to be seen when they want to be seen, or not to. And if they don't want to be seen, they will not be seen. As unfortunately, talking about losing farmland here in my town here, we are losing some because they're building more roads, which I'm not a big fan of anyway.
Okay.
I'd rather have food than more roads, personally, but that's just me.
Right.
As we expand our towns and cities, law of averages tells me that you're eventually going to run into something, because they're either going to be pissed off that they're losing their habitat, or you're actually encroaching into their territory.
Oh, yeah.
That's my take on that.
Can I follow up on that?
Of course, please.
I got the phone call by law enforcement. And here's what they said to me. Now, of course, everything's on the down low. They told me, Bryan, you need to change the way you look at things. And I said, what do you mean? They said, you know, all the state land that's set aside, the national forest, the state forests that are set aside? And I said, yeah. They said, don't look at it anymore like it's a place for you to go hunting, public hunting, to go get out in the woods with your kids and everything. This particular individual told me, look at it this way. Years ago, the government did do a study on Sasquatch, and they came to the conclusion that if food ran short, that these things would start feeding on humans. So look at it this way, that these lands were set aside as a buffer zone between humans and these creatures, that these lands are set aside for these things to hide and stay away from humans. Because one thing's for sure, they know we have guns. There's a particular story, and I don't want to get too graphic. You know, a lot of people want to make Sasquatch out to be a Winnie the Pooh type character. And I don't deny that there are some Sasquatch and Bigfoot that seem to be wonderful and pleasant. But then there's a question, are there some hostile Bigfoots? You know, here in Michigan, we tend to think as the Upper Peninsula Sasquatch is more hostile because they run into less people. Well, there's a story where a clan of Sasquatch killed, I'll try to keep it short, killed 3 adults. Hemmed them in and killed them, and were feeding on them by the time the military got there and killed 6 Bigfoot. All right. So this is what law enforcement is telling me. So they said, so be very careful when you go out and you look for these things. Be very careful, even if you're in the vicinity of where the eyewitnesses have had their encounters, because more than likely they're still there. So there's an answer to your question or your thoughts, Diego, is yeah, these lands were set aside for these creatures so they could have peace and quiet. So be very careful about going and intruding into their land.
And how, and I know you're talking about the buffer,
Mm-hmm.
but how are these territories being patrolled? Because it's an awful lot of real estate just for even a National Guard to patrol. So how are we being kept safe from them?
The DNR, this is my, I got to be careful with my sources. The DNR, in my opinion, keeps tabs on them. I was contacted by a DNR official, and where he had a face-to-face with an 8-footer just north of me. I mean, 15 miles north of me, in what's called the Minden City Swamp. And he said, you know, we know where they're at. And what he told me, Ralph, was when you hear a report of possible hostile cougar, mountain lion, because those are making a comeback here in Michigan, or a hostile black bear, which have always been here in Michigan. When you hear a report from the DNR about a hostile cougar or hostile black bear, he said, keep in mind, it could also be a problem with the Sasquatch. And we do the best we can to kind of keep them in their areas and keep tabs on them. But like I said, these things know that we have guns. They know. I mean, that one particular incident, they had military come out and eradicate 6 Sasquatch because of what they did to three adults.
Wow, and it's interesting you said something earlier because there's the popular belief that not by everyone, but let's just say general public, these are cute things or like Winnie the Pooh type creatures. But then again, if we are sharing common ancestry with them, let's say possible, that just like us, there's good humans and there's just complete piece of shit humans out there.
Bingo.
And
exactly.
Yeah. So why we could make the mistake of you don't go pet a bear, you don't go pet a Bigfoot. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of one of those risks you take, but I know I'm going off on a tangent. It's
No,
my same
you're doing
opinion
great.
when it comes with the extraterrestrials. We're thinking they're here for peace. They're going to share knowledge. They're going to cure cancer. They're going to give us the answers to the universe. Not so much, because I don't think they're really here for our own benefit, mostly their own. But that's a whole different thing. But interesting. So you and I were not too different in age. We grew up in the same time and era.
Yeah.
There was a time in the 70s, 80s, and maybe even early 90s where this kind of things was, I want to say, very popular.
Hmm.
But I don't think, not like now, but I think there are people really into uh, went out to investigate and learning more about Bigfoot, UFOs, Loch Ness Monster, Bermuda Triangle, kind of things like that. There was kind of a bit of a dead time in the
Right.
2000s,
Totally
but
agree.
now
It's hot.
within the it's hot within the last 10 years. Now we have subjects of even these kind of subjects are not being discussed in the church, especially with like subjects like the giants and Nephilim,
Exactly.
extraterrestrials. So why is this all of a sudden now coming back into, I guess, into the mind of our minds right now?
Well, I think it's I have the Christian background, so I've got a lot of times I try to keep an open mind to all things. But like you said earlier, I connected to the Nephilim somehow. I don't know how. I don't know how exactly. Read the book of Enoch. I know the book of the monsters, that there was a contingency of monsters who were good, and they asked permission to not be killed, so to speak. And God's, I'm paraphrasing what I can remember, but God said, all right, just basically, keep you in order, don't cause trouble, and you'll be fine. So, but let's pick up on something we were talking about before, real quick. Talking about church, Michigan, the question from the person from Alabama. Yes, Michigan's a hot spot for the canine, for the dog man. And that's one of the things I'm going to deal with in season 2. We just had one for sure, two possible. I think it's the same creature that was seen because it was such a close in proximity, time frame, as well, all both within 1 week of each other. The church I go to, it's funny, I go there now. I had just started feeling it out at that time. Well, the pastor got a hold of me and said, hey, kid's cutting their lawn. Guy in his, he's a man, early 20s, kid to us. He's cutting the church lawn. He's doing his lines. He's looking down and, up and turning around, doing the next line. And he looks up, and standing in the parking lot is a dog man. Full blood. He said this thing looked like, werewolves in London. Total werewolf, total dog man, no doubt about what it was. Here's the question. He got a little bit nervous, and I don't know if he looked away or if he looked away for a second and this thing ran off really quickly, or if it disappeared in front of his eyes. So this is something I got to follow up with an interview with this guy. I heard it through the pastor, so now I want to get a hold of this guy and do a one-on-one. But so was this an interdimensional being that disappeared in front of his eyes? But this kid swears up and down, he's seeing it 15 feet from him, and this thing's eyeing him, and he does not get a good vibe off of this thing. And then so within the same time frame, this another guy I know, Mike Bale, he had a sighting. We're not sure if it's a Sasquatch or a dogman, but he got the same feeling. And we measured the tree limb, and we found a footprint. The branch was at this thing's face, and it was 8.5 feet. 8.5 feet tall. So, and just huge, massive shoulders. And he said this thing was eyeing him down as well. Him and his wife both saw it. So, there's a story from the Upper Peninsula, and I'm going to follow up on it. But there's supposedly an old military radar type of base for the submarines from World War II. I'm going to be following up on this with a Sasquatch eyewitness from the Upper Peninsula later this year. But she believes that a lot of them may have come from this area. They were affected somehow. We don't know. There's a storyline that these things were once human, and now they're full-blown dogmen. So anyways, as you can see, I can talk, but there's so much information that I'm learning.
Interesting. I picked up on something you said earlier. Now, I used to live in Virginia, and I recently learned this from, I guess, a few episodes ago, that there has been an increased sightings of possible werewolves. And this goes hand in hand with what you're saying. Just like when a police officer shows up at the scene, you might have 5 witnesses that may be describing the same person, but it'll be a little bit different.
Sure.
Height, weight, shade of skin, what have you. But all I can say is to say that this thing looked more like a werewolf, which could be maybe a dogman werewolf connection.
Yeah, I
Bigfoot.
mean,
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go.
no, I just wanted to insert that, yeah, where we have the Bigfoot, like we talked about, some are nice, some could be bad. It seems like the full narrative on the dogmen or the werewolves is that they're all bad, and that don't get near one, stay away, they're bad news. They might even come after you.
And with that, I can agree with that. They seem to be a sect of a vicious tribe of these type of animals. The way they appear and disappear, and not trying to go the paranormal way because I guess that would be too easy because they just appear through a portal or
Hmm.
whatever. What is other than by foot? Mike, I'm thinking that there's some sort of cave system underground that travel easily and can come out whenever they want to. Like I said, they're masters of their own domain, so they know where they can go and cannot go.
Hmm.
How are they getting around?
Well, here's the thing. I'd say yes to cave systems. I'm going to say yes to Portal. I got an eyewitness. He is the last podcast episode I just did. He walked into a portal, he believes. And I also have a picture of what we believe from an eyewitness is a Bigfoot cloaking, where it had cloaked, say, here with one particular foliage in the background. It had picked that image up, and then it had moved to say point B, and it was still carrying the picture of this foliage into different foliage, and so it stood out, and you can see the human type outline. But this thing, of course, was huge. So here, that's your answer. Cave systems, especially down where you're at, all through Kentucky, it's ridiculous in Alabama, all through the South. Cave systems. They don't like the heat, so they stay in there a lot during the summers. Here in Michigan, they come out and they hit these two rivers, at least by me, the Black River and the Cass River, and any other sighting in Michigan are not too far from our major rivers. So yes, uh, cave systems, portals, and cloaking. I'm telling you right now, their cloaking abilities are amazing from what I've seen, and they could, unless you're focusing, unless you're thinking Sasquatch, there could be one close by and you wouldn't even know it. So there's my
I agree.
crazy answers.
No, not so crazy because a lot of people I would assume share your opinion, and definitely because I go to a lot of
And
convention, I
this
hear a
is,
lot of the
yeah,
presenters,
this
and
is,
yeah,
yeah, and this is, let me reiterate, this is really not even like me just formulating in my mind. This is from law enforcement. This is from eyewitnesses. This is a compilation because now Bigfoots of Michigan, I got people calling me, I got people telling me I don't have to go out there and search anymore, like I did the first few months. Boy, it just, lit like wildfire. And now I got people calling me and telling me and giving me their advice, giving me their opinions. So this is just everything I'm gleaning from everybody's narratives.
no, it's awesome because you're talking about people, the witnesses, similar in the UFO world where you have pilots, you have high-ranking officials that have actually witnessed these things and have
Hmm.
come out and opened. And I even believe I don't know their names, but well, one or two of the astronauts who actually went up there and reported that they saw UFOs outside of their shuttle. You have all this evidence that people are willingly ignoring because we have a lot of distractions in life. I
Sure.
don't think we really are that we interested in our own history because there's, like I said, there's a lot of distractions going on out there. Which brings me to this question. I think we're in a point now to where people get really pissed off when I say this. I hope you're not. You're not.
Probably not.
I know. I think we need to move forward from the Patterson Gimlin film and look for something a little more that's happening now. Of course, you have a lot of hoaxes out there, but from your experience and from your time exploring these locations, talk to the eyewitnesses. What is there out there today? You don't have to name names, and don't. I don't want to spoil anything you're doing that matches the same weight as the Patterson Gimlin film. But that was so long ago. What do we have now?
Well, I like the Patterson and the Paul Freeman, so let's not forget about Paul Freeman. Okay. Um, on film is the problem, is the issue. These things are usually one step ahead of us. Let's point the facts out. They can see us, they can hear us, and they can smell us way before we even know they're around. Most encounters is when these things have their mind on something else and they're caught off guard. Um, I have an episode coming, which I hope to be very fruitful, of a gentleman who has been kind of living with these things and I want to say cohabitating, but they are fully aware of him and he's been accepted to be in their area. When I do, it's I don't want to discredit any other episode, but I'm hoping to get some tangible evidence from this particular episode that's coming up. Part of my job is to travel around Michigan, and if someone's had a sighting, they'll sure tell me about it. And that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to this is supposed to be like a court case. This isn't a comedy. This is going around believing in our eyewitnesses and them telling us what happened and compiling all that data to prove, even if we don't get on camera, that these things exist, or there's a bunch of nutwhacks out there. And I don't think that's the case. But I have a very credible lead right now, and I'm hoping to get some tangible evidence. And what this gentleman has been through is absolutely amazing. 10 feet from one particular individual, large male, orangutan color, and then maybe 20, 25 feet from another black male, and he's seen almost all of the family. But yeah, and here's the kicker. This is where, I don't want to call it crazy talk, but this is where our knowledge increases. He tells me that, and he's not the only one. There's been more individuals as well coming out and telling me that there's telepathic communication. So
I've heard the same thing too.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah.
So we've got a good clan, an acceptable clan of Sasquatch who are friendly, and they've kind of accepted this gentleman being in their area, in their home space, so to speak.
And when the individuals that you've interviewed on your podcast and outside of the podcast, in person, over the phone, by email, I've known some people that how they initiate contact with a Bigfoot. They do this practice called gifting, where they leave something out there. They come back the next day or a few hours. They might leave you a rock or a stick as a thank you, or might not leave you anything at all. Have you seen that happen?
Have you
done that yourself?
I haven't seen it personally, but this episode I'm talking about, we're going to be doing that. Another eyewitness of mine, Tammy Krasick from the Upper Peninsula, she's exchanged. Yes, multiple eyewitnesses have exchanged. Yes. Yeah, that is part of it.
Good. I think that's probably the best approach to start off with. I mean, I'm not an experienced outdoors person, but I think that would be, I guess, the nicest way of doing it. I guess to establish some sort of trust.
Yeah, totally agree. I think we should be on our guard, always, in the sense of that when you go out in the wilderness, whether you believe all that we're talking about or not, Ralph, just, be aware. Especially if you're taking kids out, just be smart, be aware. And so then if you do happen to come across one of these creatures, you're not losing your mind over it, because these things can project fear onto people, from my understanding. And, a lot of times these people are very shaken up and having a hard time to move forward in life. So yeah, I do gifting. Let them know you're peaceful. And that you're not there to harm them.
And going down that same route, there are those with the opinions that when they go out and search for Sasquatch, they find these signs, not human signs. I'm talking about structures.
Yeah.
Sometimes it could be, the wind blows these trees down, and it looks like it might be some sort of a human-made structure. Sometimes it happens by accident, but there are some out there that I don't think nature makes itself, where it seems like some sort of intelligent person or being place these structures for a reason. Now, there are two opinions that I've heard in the past. Is one is either they're communicating with each other, or a warning sign of this is my territory, or two, maybe it's just using it for shelter for that moment and then move on somewhere else. Where do you fall on that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Now, first of all, you got to get out in the woods to be able to discern what's just deadfall, because there's a lot of crazy deadfall out there. Okay. So I always approach all of that skeptical. But yes, we have tree structures here. And by the particular tree structures that I know of, I have found footprints. So even though I've never seen one, I found the footprint myself. I think I've got 4 or 5, maybe even 6 footprints now that I have found myself at the locations where people tell me these creatures are. And then when you go back there, you see the tree structures. One particular tree structure, it's a hut. It is a hut. And I was talking with someone who used to be in the BFRO. And when they saw it, they said, "Oh my gosh, do you know what that is?" And I just thought, maybe some hunters built it. They said, no, that is that particular structure, and with the corral around it, because it was a hut, kind of like a teepee structure, but very well fortified. Like, it took a while to make this. It wasn't a bunch of kids. It wasn't a deer blind from hunters. I have pictures of it. I'll have to show you. And then there's corrals. And then there's like 3 or 4 corrals around the center corral. And what I mean by corral is trees were purposely knocked down and placed like fences, like you would see for horses or cows, where those are corralled in. So you'd have this hut in the middle and then a corral around it. And the BFRO person told me that is a nursery. When they have baby Sasquatch, they're crawling around like humans do. They fence them in, like a child gate, a baby gate that you put up between your living room and your kitchen. So yeah, it's amazing. So yes, then pertaining to what you're talking about is, yes, I believe the tree structures are there mainly. Like when you get deep in the woods, man, I've got some locations where, I'm walking an hour to get back into the woods, and you see these things. It's off the trail. I had Colorado wild games professional tracker come out to Michigan, and I'm kind of new to this game, and I keep to the trails as much as I can, even the game trails, but he took me off road, so to speak, and we went back in there and we found, what did we find? We found 4 footprints is what we found. And then you'll see the tree structures. And so in my opinion, is sure, they're for humans, but more than that, they're for family clans of Sasquatch who have a home base, and they're letting other Bigfoot know, hey, this piece of property, it's already taken. It's already taken by, so-and-so family clan of Sasquatch, so don't come in here. Because the alpha males are very aggressive. And I wouldn't even doubt if how lions in Africa, once the young males become of age, they'll try to take over a pride from the reigning alpha lion.
Yeah.
I wouldn't doubt if that happens too. And so these things are purposely set up to let other Sasquatch or young male Sasquatch who are looking to make a name for themselves and carve out their own area. They're letting them know, hey, no, you're not carving out your area here. This is taken already. So yeah, that's what I believe. But you've got to be very skeptical on most tree structures, though, because it could just be deadfall. I've seen some crazy deadfall.
No, and I agree with you, which in a sense it makes them similar to us, or more us like them, because it's my opinion, they've been here long before us.
Yep.
On my property right here, we have about 2 acres. It's fenced in. We're telling no trespassing, beware of dog. Mm-hmm. That's my language to my neighbors. They don't come over here.
Yep.
I would assume the same thing with them. But go ahead, what you were saying.
Oh yeah, no, it made me think of a story where a teenager's out with his grandpa and they're fishing. Okay, and I don't think this was in Michigan. I'm trying to remember the state, but anyways, they're out there fishing on a pond. They're out in the boonies, and they hear just craziness coming from the forest, and out come 2 male Sasquatch, and they're fighting to the death. and they could tell. They said one of them was, you could tell one was older and one was younger, and they were having that competition to see who was gonna be the alpha male. And the alpha male ended up winning against the younger one and almost killed it. But yeah, so I think those kind of challenges happen, and that's why we'll see those tree structures. It's letting them know, hey man, you're gonna run into trouble if you come past this point.
Amazing how that's happening. And speaking of, you talking about the kids that heard them fight, and I'm sure there's something verbal going on as well. And you talked earlier how they talk, possibly communicate telepathically.
Uh-huh.
Now, there's been reports, and I actually have one coming in next month, coming back to tell us about her story, where she actually heard the Bigfoot making sounds verbally. Now, there was no communication telepathically, but
What
that's
we
where I was
call the
going.
samurai
Yes.
chatter. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, my
Exact-
eyewitness. Yeah, who I'm running out with here in about, it's at the end of June we're going out. Yeah, it's not even far from my house. Samurai chatter. There's evidently in this particular family clan, there's the alpha male who watches over everything. He just watches everything. But then there's two adolescents. He said they're the ones who don't have as much self-control. He said that adult will walk up on you and you won't even know it's there. He said, but these adolescents, they can only be quiet for so long, it seems. He said, then you're going to hear them. And he said he heard them going back and forth with that samurai chatter. And yeah, so anyways, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm trying to hold off for the episode. There's more, just a wonderful encounter this guy had having to do with it, that type of language back and forth.
No, brother, I'm on the hook already. I can't wait to watch and listen to what it is you have coming out soon. So I'm going to break away sort of from this real quick.
Sure.
You're an actor, producer,
Mhm.
and you've gotten to know some of the people in that profession. Not to name names. So Hollywood's very interesting because depending on what era of Hollywood you're talking about, there always seems to be some sort of subculture or something where they're involved in things that are either paranormal or outside of what people think it would be kind of weird.
Mhm.
Not weird behavior, but I guess weird subjects that they discuss with each other. Without naming names, of course. Have you ever encountered one of these actors that maybe they say, hey, one day I saw this, whether it's a ghost, UFO, or Bigfoot? Anyone of them have that conversation with you yet?
Yeah, I have everybody approaching me now. Yeah, like I said, like we said, no names, but yes, when people find out what I'm doing, they start opening up, and it has to do with ghosts and aliens. So there's been talk about ghosts before, and very physical encounters. In fact, being punched in the chest. To me, that's a higher up entity, dark entity. That's the way I think as a Christian with my background. So there was that instance, and then yeah, aliens walking through walls. So yeah, and Hollywood. I I do believe as a Christian, I'm fortunate in the sense that I do believe in the protection from God. I do believe in the protection in the name of Jesus Christ. And when you're out there, and this is just my opinion, everybody's got to find their own path in life. But when you're out there making your own way and you're meddling, so to speak, in areas that sometimes we shouldn't be meddling in too far, you're going to have encounters. You're going to have encounters. And that's why I just think
Interesting
so
you
much
say that.
material.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why Hollywood has so much material on all of these subjects. UFOs, ghosts. Why do you think there's so many horror films? I mean, there's some spectacular. And don't get me wrong, I love filmmaking and I love movies and I love being scared by a good movie. Boy, the Mothman, was it the Mothman Chronicles or Prophecies with Richard Gere?
Prophecies.
Yeah. I want to come down there and check that area out. This, in my opinion, this is legit stuff. And so many of these are based off of true stories.
I agree. And if you ever find yourself headed to the wonderful state of West Virginia, please Give me a call. Text me.
Well,
let me know. I'll meet
well,
you
you might
down there,
just
man.
you might just get that because my mother lives in North Carolina, right there, just north of the South Carolina border. So yeah, I'd love to meet up. I've actually had calls from I've had calls from around the nation. There's just not enough time in the day. I have to focus on Michigan, and then we'll branch off more, and we'll see if this thing gets sold. You know, we get a studio budget, as they say, and the sky's the limit. We're all over the United States. So yeah.
That's fantastic news. And for the listeners of Let's Find Out, they want to know more about what you do. Not only you're acting and producing, but also Bigfoots of Michigan, Bigfoots of America, the podcast, the YouTube channel. Where can they learn more about this?
Yeah, just go ahead, Bigfoots of Michigan. So that's Bigfoots, bigfootsofmichigan.com. That will lead you to everything. If you want to go on YouTube, put in Bigfoots of Michigan channel, and all of our episodes will come up. Go ahead, follow me on Facebook, Bryan Sawyer, an actor, host of Bigfoots of Michigan. Get connected with the group page, which is Bigfoots of Michigan / Bigfoots of America podcast. We're up around 5,000 people, and it's growing every day. People are kind of really zeroing in on what we're doing and getting on board with it. And yeah. So we're just going to be a one-stop for as much of this kind of content as possible. And to give you a little teaser we've got maybe even a pterodactyl episode where people have seen pterodactyls on the west coast of Michigan. So there's some crazy stuff going on. Crazy paranormal stuff. I love it. I'm having so much fun, I'm
loving everything that you're doing. And, while this type of work can be both rewarding and fruitful, it can also be dangerous. Please be careful out there. I want to have you back later this year in one piece, and we can discuss all this great footage and all your great guests that you have on.
Sounds good, man. Sounds good. Yeah. My rule of thumb is don't go out alone. Always have a partner. At least one person with you.
You got that right, my friend. This has been another excellent episode of Let's Find Out with Diego. Please check us out on all our social media pages as well as our YouTube, and we're also on Rumble. Like, share, and subscribe. Also, Let's Find Out is now on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. Catch the show on Saturdays at 2 a.m. For more information, please visit kgradb.com. That's kgradb.com. Thank you for taking this journey with me. Until next time, my friends.
All content for Let's Find Out is property of co-host Diego and is served directly from our servers with no modification, redirects, or rehosting. All celebrity impersonators are paid performers. The impersonated celebrities do not endorse or promote any views or opinions expressed by our guests, co-host Diego, or Let's Find Out. The information shared on Let's Find Out is provided on an as-is basis, with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.